Now going to move on. We've been showcasing all sorts of wonderful bits of innovation, and now we're going to talk about something sort of near and dear to my heart as a co-director of an innovation lab. That would be a mini panel on legal innovation labs. The title says it all. Sam.
All right. Here's how I'll try to frame this. We've been talking about cool innovation projects all day. So Cherie, Kat, and I are going to try and talk up one level about where those innovation projects come from. I feel like I just introduced the birds and the bees to my children. So let's do introductions first. We'll say who you are, what do you do for work, and one thing that you like to talk about at the reception that isn't work related. Go ahead, Cherie.
So I'm Cherie Gilchrist, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Legal Aid of North Carolina, and I'm also the director of our Innovation Lab. And what that means is that I am looking at how we can leverage technology and other creative solutions to expand access to justice and serve people more effectively. So we're looking both externally at solutions for clients as well as internally for solutions for our lawyers to improve their effectiveness at their job. In addition to that, I'm also, like I said, the day-to-day director of our innovation lab, and the lab is sort of an incubator where we're actively testing and deploying solutions in the lab itself.
And what do you like to talk about?
What do I like to talk about? Yeah. I like to talk about traveling because that's sort of what I love to do. I have a trip coming up to Scotland in June, and that's all I've been talking about and asking people for tips and hints and things and places to visit.
Perfect. All right, Kat. It's on the top.
Hello. Oh, it works now.
There you are.
I'm Kat Moon. I co-direct the Vanderbilt AI Law Lab, otherwise known as VAIL. And I've been teaching at Vanderbilt, this is year 9. So we launched the program on law and innovation, POLI. Vanderbilt loves its acronyms, in 2016. And I've been also practicing law for almost 30 years now. So that's what I did before I started teaching at Vanderbilt. So I'm a little bit unusual for my law school. Most of my colleagues practiced law, if at all, for a year or two, and then started teaching. So we launched VAIL in November of 2023, and our mission is essentially to run experiments at the intersection of AI and the law. And the lab's mission is around the AI of law, not the law of AI. They are two different things, even though there is space where they kind of converge. And we're realizing that policy and governance is kind of that space. But anyhow, so we run cool experiments. Our primary objective is to operate as a learning lab. So we start with helping students in the building learn as much as they can about the technology and how it might impact the work that they do as professionals. And then we move out from there and create resources for the profession at large. And we've been fortunate to actually work with Cherie. So,
yeah. And what do you like to talk about that's not work related?
Oh, yeah. Well, like Cherie, travel. I'm down to talk about travel absolutely anytime. Did not know about Scotland. We need to chat about that. I'm happy to share a couple things. Heading to Buenos Aires in a little bit. I'll see Mark Lart's in there, maybe Tom. We've got a legal tech event there. That's the cool thing about legal tech. It will take you all over the world if you want to go. Seize those opportunities. The other thing I'm happy to talk about are chickens. So we have chickens. So if anybody wants to talk about chickens, I can do that. Yep.
And I'm Sam Glover, and I work for the Suffolk Lit Lab. I'm a clinical fellow here. You've been hearing about what I do and our students and my colleagues do all day, so I'm not going to go into more depth about that. You can talk to me about winter camping in the northern Minnesota.
That
Okay,
sounds terrible.
That is no.
that's perception chat.
That is
Okay.
that is fair. That is fair. We do need to talk about that later.
All right.
Okay.
Do y'all have like does your lab have a purpose or a mission statement apart from what you've already said? Like what would you say is the concise statement of the purpose or mission?
I think I stated it. It really is to expand access to justice. You know, we have at Legal Aid of North Carolina, we are a statewide legal services program, means we serve all 100 counties. We're funded by LSC. We have an excessive demand for services. I also used to manage our centralized intake unit, and at the time that I managed that unit, we were receiving over 300,000 calls annually, and that was about 2 years ago. And we have 2 million people who are eligible in our state for services. And so we realized really quickly that the model that we had, of one lawyer to every client and coming through the centralized system, that wasn't going to be sufficient to meet the demand and meet the need that exists in our state. And so we really set up the lab to find a way to scale our services and to expand our reach and be able to expand access. And for us, access doesn't start when somebody contacts us or providing a lawyer for somebody to go to court. It really starts with information. So it was also taken several steps back and look at what does access really mean for clients that we serve, and how could we use technology to better meet those needs.
Can you give us some examples of like what are some of the projects that you mentioned intake, but what are some of the other kinds of projects that are big showcases for you or that are currently where your attention is?
Yeah, so when we started the lab, it was probably around 6 months to a year after ChatGPT was launched. I think it was about a year after. So it was sort of this fortuitous moment where we were launching this lab, looking at how we can expand access to justice using technology. And then here was this new tech that was, being launched, and everybody was talking about it, and it did seem magical at the time. And it did seem like it could immediately overcome so many of the barriers that our clients face, whether it was language barriers, just the technicality of the legal process and the law and the legalese and all of those things that we were all struggling with. It just seemed like this tool could immediately overcome that. And so we started looking at an AI solution. We worked with some of our colleagues in North Carolina Duke Center for Law and Technology on what would be a good concept note. And we decided to start with intake because that's sort of the foundation for legal services, right? You can't have effective legal services if you don't have effective intake, because no matter how good your attorneys are, they could be brilliant attorneys, but if you're not bringing in the right clients, and for us, the clients that are at the poverty level, the people with the highest need, if we're not able to meet those people, then we're not really.
Do you know intake volume off the top of your head?
Intake volume right now?
Yeah.
We close at the central intake unit alone. We close about 10,000 cases, or 15,000. Yeah. No, a year.
A year.
A year.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's just closed
Not
cases.
that 10,000 a year isn't a lot.
Yeah, that's just closed cases.
Okay.
I think we handle about 25,000 through our central intake unit a year.
Kat, what about you? What are some of the projects that you're focused on? And I mean, you said your mission is sort of the AI of the law, and maybe you could say more about how that's reflected in your projects.
Well, you asked about mission,
Yeah.
and so I'm looking at the website to make sure that what I say is consistent with what is being put out there. So the Vanderbilt AI Law Lab is dedicated to exploring the transformative potential of artificial intelligence in legal education and the practice of law. Our mission is to foster deep curiosity, critical creativity, and radical collaboration, bridging the gap between technology and law to enhance legal services and legal education. A lot of words, not sure what they exactly mean, but that's maybe on purpose. And I think our lab, so the short story of our very quickly saw that generative AI specifically had the potential to really transform a lot of things in the legal profession. And for a little bit of context, in the program on law and innovation, I've been teaching a data and law practice class, and we actually used GPTs through Hugging Face before ChatGPT came out. So we've been tracking the potential for this.
Hugging Face?
Hugging Face is it's a website that it's actually where GPT lived
Oh,
before ChatGPT was a thing.
huh, okay.
Yeah. And so it was fun. It was really a parlor trick at that time, right? We could log in and you could ask a simple question and it would kind of answer. And the students were like, ooh, what happens when this really works? Oh, yes, that's a great question. We're living that now. So we've always been very curious, and we've tried to kind of stay as much on the bleeding edge of this for the students who take our courses. And our dean just saw this opportunity. And so he came to me and my co-director, Mark Williams, and said, what if I funded a lab and you just started exploring and trying to figure out what this means for our students, for the profession? And so he gave us some money and we started exploring, and then he funded it for another term. And we really have just been, as the mission is kind of open-ended, and I think that's what this moment really requires right now. So I have, for a long time, once I realized the superpower that curiosity is, have tried to live by a mantra that I took from a Mary Oliver poem. And it is, I live in the open-mindedness of not knowing enough about anything. And I think that that's a real superpower for us all right now, because I don't think the train's going to slow down. I think it's probably just going to speed up. And, the question is, how do we continue this wild ride and not just completely lose our minds? So back to the lab, the objective first and foremost is how are we preparing our students in the building? And then we go out from that. And my particular interest is in really partnering with organizations like Cherie's to bring our students' natural curiosity and their intelligence and do things very similar to the amazing projects that your students were sharing with us today, right? And so we tend to do that by partnering with organizations with funding to build certain things. So what our lab doesn't do is, like, we don't build a thing and try to maintain it, for example, right? We don't exist to have. We partnered with American Arbitration Association. We helped user test one of their AI tools, for example. So opportunities to connect in with organizations that are building. Our students also come up with their own ideas, again, similar to the projects that your students shared, and look to find homes and places and organizations that are interested in building these things. We have a current project that I can talk about. But maybe, yeah. But I'll maybe come back around to that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about that, and maybe I'm curious for both of you. Who's the one who does the work of the project? Like, do you have in-house staff, designers, developers, engineers? Do you rely? I mean, I assume from you a lot of the work is students, but it sounds like external too. It sounds like you have a collaboration, so maybe students on both ends.
Yeah, so we sort of have this three-prong approach. There are some things that we just buy off the shelf. We evaluate them. We go through our criteria that we use to evaluate them. There are some things that we co-build. So we work with a vendor and we really do a custom build. So we partner with them. And then there's some things, yes, that we build in-house. We do have a senior software engineer that works with us. We also have an IT team that we can rely on. And we have a program manager. We just lost our project manager, so we need to replace him. But we have a program manager who sort of oversees the day-to-day operations, keeps me on task, keeps the whole thing running smoothly so that we're on track.
How many people is that in-house?
5
or 6?
Five, yeah, okay. If I count the IT person.
Okay. How about you?
So the immediate Veil team is 4 people. So Mark, my co-director, and I, and then we have 2 librarians who are also on the Veil team, and they both teach in our curriculum. So at any given time, we're teaching 6 to 8 core AI curriculum courses, and we have close to 20 developed that we kind of cycle through. And we tend to add 1 or 2 of those every year just because new things like agents course is now coming online. As things happen, we have to address them. So I don't teach data and law practice anymore, for example. It's been replaced by other things. So Kyle and Emily, the librarians, also are responsible for managing our tech stack. So we're very lucky. It seems like every legal tech company out there wants our students to test their product. And sometimes that's a good idea. Often it is not. But the good news for us is we are able to give our students a really rich experience in testing and playing around with these products in a really safe environment. I will state first and foremost that none of us on the Veil team view our job to teach our students how to use particular products, first and foremost. We don't focus on any given one. We don't endorse any given one. First and foremost, our objective is to give them the mindsets and the skills to figure out how to use whatever is put in front of them, because that's going to constantly change, right? Not only that, we did have a couple of students who picked as independent projects, like going deep on a platform that they knew they would be using in practice next year. And the reason why they chose to do this? This is interesting to me, because they're both going into giant corporate law firms that have these really expensive AI platforms, and there's no one in that firm who can mentor them on how to use that platform. Now, they may bring in the vendor to train, but that's not the same. We all know that, right? And so they're like, I'm going to learn this inside and out so that when I get there and I start getting work, I will start to see the connections and I will know how to use this tool to do my work, because there's nobody around me who's going to be able to show me how to do this.
You're building lawyers with bigger toolboxes.
Yes. Yeah. And so that wasn't, our objective, but we taught them, we're teaching them how to do that, right? And it doesn't matter the tool that they're handed, because I mentioned that in part because they just gave their final presentations. And one of them was saying, yeah, I built this whole section on this one thing that the tool did 2 months ago, but it doesn't do that anymore the same way. Like the tool itself, right, is evolving so quickly. Like you get one thing figured out and then suddenly that's replaced and disappeared. And but she was cool as a cucumber. She's like, yeah, that happens. Is a senior partner at a law firm going to be cool as a cucumber about that? So I lost my train of thought.
But I could pick up on a thread that I could pick up on a thread that Kat mentioned about not being overly reliant on one specific AI model. We aren't either. We're not training our team or attorneys on any one specific AI model. Everything we build is sort of model agnostic. Because everything is evolving so quickly and rapidly, you never know where it's going to go. You don't want to be locked into one model that doesn't work 2 months later and you've invested all this time and resources. And for us, resources are scarce. So if we're going to put a lot of time and effort into building something, it has to be able to evolve and adapt. And so that's something that we're working with our teams to understand. And to that end, we're spending a lot of time on AI governance as well, and creating sort of a model framework that's not tied to any one system. Because again, that framework needs to be able to evolve as things evolve. And to your point, Kat, that's been something that's surprising, because we do have a lot of pro bono partners, big law firms that will come and want to partner with us. And it never ceases to amaze me when they say, oh, you guys are way more sophisticated than we are. I'm like, we don't have the money you do. Why are we more sophisticated than you are? But it's because I think we have an incentive that they don't to get this right and to build things that are responsible, because our clients are the most vulnerable. They're always the ones that sort of, they get left with whatever is left. And so we make it a point of duty to just ensure that whatever we're doing it safely and responsibly and ethically.
I have a lot of follow-up questions, but of course I foolishly decided that I could have a conversation in a half an hour with two interesting people. So,
Oh, we got like 17 seconds left. Yeah.
no, not quite.
And we can take a little more time and
I'll wander around a bit then. But I wanted to, I mean, part of the reason I wanted to do this was to talk about the concept of a lab.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What does it mean to you, and why is it important? And why is it a thing now? Why do they seem to be proliferating?
Well, for me, I started as a legal aid attorney. I didn't know I was going to be a legal aid attorney. It was not in the cards. I never thought I would end up here, but I started as a legal aid attorney. I've been a legal aid attorney now for 20 years, and I've litigated. I've worked in rural offices where, talk about scarce resources and then compound that with infrastructure barriers, lack of transportation, clients that have to wait on a ferry because we're a coastal state to get across to, the waterway to get to court. Well, to then beg a ride to get to court. Those are the barriers that our clients were faced with. And one of the things that struck me when I was litigating was that I kept thinking there has got to be a better way to practice law. The way that we practice in just me going to court with somebody, and yes, I might win the case, but then that doesn't actually solve the problem that they came to me with, because it's a bigger issue. It's a bigger access issue. It's a bigger poverty issue. And so
Big impact for one person,
it's
but
an
it's not
impact
an
for one
impact for everybody
person.
else.
And so
Yeah.
I kept thinking there's got to be a different way. Thankfully, I was allowed to sort of have this non-traditional career within a legal aid program where they did allow me to experiment and explore. And if I could think of something and if I could see it through and figure out a way to do it, they would allow me to do it. That coupled with our CEO coming in with the concept of an innovation lab, because she had worked with our state bar around regulatory reform that didn't go so well. The sandbox that they were thinking about did not materialize. And so she thought about, well, the concept of a lab that's going to incubate ideas and create solutions that could work within the regulatory framework. So she came in with that. And I was already of the mindset that there has got to be a different way to practice. And so those two thoughts collided. And so for us, the lab is really a force multiplier. It allows us to incubate ideas. It allows us to surface ideas that our staff already have. One thing about legal aid attorneys is we've always had to be creative. We've always had to be innovative because we've never had the manpower or the financial resources to get the job done. So we've always had to figure out a way to do it with creativity and curiosity. And so, so for us, that wasn't the issue. There were excellent solutions that were there already, or ideas for solutions that were there, but we didn't have the avenue or the vehicle to surface those and then bring resources to bear and then see them to fruition. So the lab allowed us to do that. It also allowed us to go out and explore and see what else might be out there, learn from other industries, and adapt or adopt best practices from other industries and bring that into a legal aid program. And so it really, for me, is just a creative space to be able to do that.
What do you see as a lab, and what is it? Why is it important right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of the purpose and existence of a lab in a law school has similar anchors, I think, to what you described, Sheree. But for me, it goes back to an event that I hosted in the summer of 2019 called Failure Camp. And so about 60 lawyers showed up at Vanderbilt in the middle of the summer, and we explored what failure means from a professional perspective. And the whole frame for that was that innovation requires experimentation. And an experiment is not an experiment if you know the outcome, which means that you're doing something that you don't know what the result's going to be. And that is scary for the trained lawyer brain, right? We want certainty of outcome. And so for us to experiment out loud is uncomfortable for many of us. Not me. I'm not wired normally. I'm a fifth generation attorney, but somehow that gene got bred out of me. I don't know. I don't have it. But so our lab is really framed around this idea that it is a safe place to experiment, right? And we don't know what the outcome is going to be. And what safer place for a law student than a school filled with really smart people who care about the student's success and helping them learn and grow and giving them that safe space to learn and experiment. And so that's really our primary frame, is what does it take? What are the mindsets? What are the skills to be really good at experimenting? And this is something that our entire profession is going to have to upskill on very, very quickly, because change is just going to come at us faster and faster. And I believe that one of the reasons why we see such an incredibly embarrassing gap in civil justice services is because our profession has given up profoundly on creative imagination and doing anything differently. I will say I'm a fifth generation lawyer. My father was a practicing lawyer until he died in his 80s. And so I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, raised by a man who just served regular people. I went to Vanderbilt Law School, and I didn't really have a clear concept that there was such a clear divide in the practice between people, lawyers who served corporations and lawyers who served regular people, until I showed up at Vanderbilt. And so it's funny because there's this idea that if you're the child of a lawyer, you somehow have an advantage in law school. I actually think my father disadvantaged me in some ways, because I had what turned out to be a very narrow vision from the perspective of a Vanderbilt student about what it means to be a lawyer. But that growing up with a father who got paid in chickens from some people, right? He helped people who couldn't afford to pay him and literally got paid. Like, we ate a lot of chickens that people gave us because that's what they could afford to pay with. And so this really framed what I saw as what it meant to be a lawyer. And so I show up at law school and learn that, and this is not a judgmental statement. I just learned that there are a lot of different ways to view being a lawyer, right? And there are a lot of different ways to lawyer. And the practice of law is this giant spectrum. Our profession and our industry is a giant spectrum. And so I view a lab, to bring it back to the lab is this safe space for our students to experiment and really think deeply about the profound challenges that our profession faces. You look anywhere on the spectrum of the legal profession, and we face profound challenges, whether it is the fact that most people in this country who have a legal problem never get help from a lawyer, or whether it's the fact that we have thousands of people practicing in corporate law firms in environments that are not ideal for mental health and well-being, right? And everything in between. And so there are all these problems that we get to think about how we can fix and how technology can help us fix them. And so I think that's what I see a lab as. Like, it's this safe place to think about the profound challenges we face, both the systemic ones and the human ones, and how can technology help us solve these problems.
I feel like you both mentioned experimentation a few times, and as you were speaking, I hope I'm not going in the wrong direction with what you're saying, but I was feeling actually kind of optimistic about our profession, because I feel like our profession is very, we have the answers, we know what the problem is, we just need to solve it. And the fact that our institutions, your employer, your organization, have all said, I think we need to experiment because we're not really sure how to solve these problems, that actually feels really optimistic to me. So I'm going to choose to take it that way. I like that. And it does seem like what we need right now, and providing students with a safe space and a new set of tools, whether it's failure or technology, awareness, and knowledge, those all seem like really important things to me. We have a short time, so I haven't really gotten a chance to ask all the questions I want to, but what is something that you want to leave people? What's the takeaway you would like people to have about your lab and your work, so we can continue the conversations this afternoon at the reception?
I think for me, and I'm going to borrow something Kat just said about training you're training law students to be curious and creative. And I think for me, when I think of it and the broader spectrum of who we serve, is that I hope that when those students are trained, that they will either give back or they will come and practice in an organization like mine and bring that creativity to bear, and so that we can start to move the needle, because it's going to take, I think, a lot of change. I mean, AI is in and of itself bringing about some of that change, but I think it's going to take a real mindset change as well. That, you know, you're taking a risk-averse profession, you're throwing in a tool that's telling you to abandon everything you've been trained about risk, and then you're also you have this big gap of need that exists, and how do you solve that? So I really hope that the students take what they learn, that they come and they become attorneys that are more curious, more willing to step outside the box, more willing to look at the bigger issue, the deeper issue. Because if you look at the national numbers, 52 million people who are eligible for legal services, I mean, as it is right now, that means, you know, we aren't, as a profession, really serving the people that really need the help, as well as maybe fulfilling our ethical duties as attorneys. So I really think that it's an integrated approach, I think, is where I'm heading, that if we can all work together, Kat doing her piece, we work a lot with people like Sonia, and I see Tom there from LawDroid. It's really going to take a collective and an integrated approach to problem solving, but it's going to start with abandoning some of the fears. You can be cautious, you can be responsible, but not fearful. We have to do something else other than, you know, protect what's ours and not worry about everybody else.
Kat?
So Sam, I don't want to not be optimistic, first of all.
I
And
don't think
I
any of us
really,
would have survived this
I
long.
really am optimistic. I wouldn't still be doing this. I wouldn't be almost 30 years into the practice and still be trying. This is what I've come to believe. We are not going to realize the immense opportunity we have with technology to serve more people within the existing system. It's not possible. And I say that because we have a legal system that gives a monopoly, for the most part, to licensed lawyers, with very few exceptions. And so this is a bargain that our profession struck. We get a monopoly, and our end of the bargain was that we then are the gatekeepers of justice. We're the helpers. We're the ones who help. The numbers do not support that. They never have, and they never will. They just can't. There are anywhere between 1.3 and 1.4 million practicing lawyers in the US at any given time. At any given time, Americans are experiencing 260 million legal problems. And anywhere from 30 to 40% of licensed practicing lawyers do not work in the service of individual people who are experiencing those 260 million problems. None of that is a judgment statement. The license to practice law is a business license. We do have ethical rules that we have to follow. If you get the license, you can't lie to the court. You have to safeguard the confidences of your client. Like, we have operational ethical guidelines. We have aspirational ethical guidelines. The aspirational ones are the basis for our bargain for the monopoly, and they are that we will help people who otherwise would not get help. It is aspirational. Not one single lawyer has to help anyone who can't pay them what that person wants to be paid. I say that knowing that thousands of people with law licenses, including probably every single person in this room and the students in this room, will be this. They meet their aspirational obligation, right? Either by what they do professionally or the help that they provide. outside of what they get paid to do. But that will never be enough. The aspirations of our profession, of the 1.3 to 1.4 million lawyers, will never be enough to justify our monopoly. That has to go. It has to go. I don't know what that looks like, but that's part of the experiments, the safe experiments we have to run. Technology is giving us a runway to do that, but as long as, I forgot to mention, LegalZoom. Who was here for the mention of LegalZoom? LegalZoom was sued in 2024
That was the boogeyman of.
by lawyers. It's still pending. Like, we won't give up. Stop suing LegalZoom, folks. Give up. I know I can't count on my toes and fingers the people in my life who have been helped by LegalZoom, right? Because they can't hire a lawyer to do the work for them for the same price. They get what they need. Give it up. Okay, off that soapbox. Look, my point is, like, we cannot fix this within the existing system. We hold on too tight to monopoly we don't deserve. And I believe that every practicing lawyer should be able to earn a living, whatever living they want to earn. This is not about judgment, but let's stop pretending that our profession is doing something that it is not, that it cannot. We simply will never, ever be enough, not even with generative AI behind us. And so we have to have a new system. We have to creatively, actively, immediately explore how we create a system that actually gives the millions of people who right now get no help. I was on a panel not long ago with Satish Nori. I don't know, Satish.
He was here last year.
Yeah, so Satish, we were on a panel, and Satish likes to make outrageous comments, kind of like what I just made, but he made the comment, what if a meteor struck and killed all the lawyers? Like, we're all gone. And I'm like, Satish, how are people who we've never existed for going to notice we're gone? Like, we don't exist for millions of people. Like, they don't care if a meteor comes and takes us out. We don't exist for them. That is a profound challenge to the reason why we say we deserve our monopoly. So we either need to step it up or give it up. Like, it just is. And I think artificial intelligence, if it continues to master the technical capacities of the practice of law, and all we're left with are the human capacities, for which we do a terrible job across the board of training in law school. And I would even go so far as to say that many people who self-select into law don't want to have those exceptional human capacities. That's not why they're here. It's going to really leave us very, very exposed for what has been the truth, reality. So
Sure.
I'm done now.
Any parting thoughts? Here, here.
No, she's right.
Yeah,
I just can't articulate.
Amen.
it.
Done.
I'm regulated.
Yeah. I can drop my little lapel mic.
I was gonna be like, now I'm a public radio announcer, and I have to know. Okay, that's enough time. But amen. We're done.
Sorry.
No, that's awesome. We'll chat later more at the reception. Thanks.
Okay. All right.